sizing the market is super important. And then getting market feedback, just like a designer does. I mean, business people need to behave like designers. Like, let's have no sort of religion about what our solution is, but go take it to people who might be potential customers.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode, as well as free training on creativity, over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have on the show Jules Pieri. Jules Pieri is CEO and co-founder of the Grommet, a popular online product launch platform that discovers, supports, and sells innovative makers. These products can range from problem-solving kitchen utensils to high-tech innovations. In her new book, How We Make Stuff Now, Jules shares advice and inspiration on how anyone can turn their idea into a product that they can sell. And it's my great pleasure to have Jules with us today. So welcome, Jules.
Thank you, James.
So share with us all what's happening in your world at the moment.
Well, business keeps on keeping on. Small businesses don't have the chance to press pause, even though we're speaking during kind of the early days of a pretty big pandemic. But these are folks who have communities to serve and people in their family to feed. So we're keeping on.
Now, you're originally from Detroit, I believe. So that's a kind of a city that's gone through its share of kind of hard times. It seems to be it's been going through a renaissance recently as well. Did that inform, being brought up, did that inform your decision to become an industrial engineer, a designer and maker?
Probably indirectly, I would say so. Yes, I grew up, in the city of Detroit, surrounded by people who generally did something with their hands, whether they were telephone line repairmen or, like my dad, a tool maker at a Ford factory. And when you're around people like that, you generally have sort of a can-do attitude about hacking and making on a small scale, not necessarily as an entrepreneur. But when I went to college, I was inspired by seeing some small-scale models built by industrial design students in a display case in the school where I was taking just a plain old sculpture class, art and design school, and said, who gets to do that? Like, who gets to design products? Never occurred to me that was a job. And I already knew I wasn't necessarily going to be a fine artist, but I had strong creative talent or bent. But I also liked business just as much. And I could see these were like little hand tools that were modeled by the students. And I could see just when I looked at, one power drill, oh my God, I can do that. I would love to do that.
So what was it about? Was it the nature of kind of just doing things with your hands, that kind of tactile side, or was it just taking an idea, just a concept, an idea, and making it real, making it the reality, or the effect that you could have on the world? What was it really that kind of got you about doing this type of work?
It's definitely blank piece of paper, blank screen, filling it. I just enjoy that. I've never had a job that anyone ever held before in the company. Jobs were always created for me, or I created an organization in the case of the Grommet. And I'm never that interested in sort of improving and optimizing from a base. I like to start from scratch. So if you're a product designer, that's kind of the job, right? Always sort of marrying up technological and competitive and consumer trends to come up with something that represents a healthy, successful future in the form of a product. But I get the same kind of yeahs out of other activities. It can be from writing, same thing, blank piece of paper. I always enjoy, I write a weekly update for our team, and I'm always sort of glad once I've just sent it out that, I've kind of communicated, I've created something for the team that matters. But it can be, cooking, it'd be a lot of things for me, but for me, the biggest thing is when I can take it to scale like I do in business. Like, design's my passion, but business became my craft along the way.
So tell us about the inception of the Grommet. For people that haven't heard about the Grommet, tell them a little bit about what it is and how did you kind of get it started?
So we launch one product a day, and we look at 200 to 300 a week. So there's quite a fine curation engine going. And in our earlier days, we launched products that sort of everyone knows, like Fitbit, SodaStream, OtterBox, Simply Safe, Swell water bottles, Bananagrams, a fan favorite. And so we range across a huge kind of variety of categories. I say it's everything sort of between a bag of flour and a car, something that might be relevant to your life. So tools, toys, personal accessories, tech. And the origin story really had to do with one of my forays in a big company. I was working at Play School, and I noticed that our best new product ideas were not making it to market. They would sort of just fall off the table at an early stage. Made no sense to me. I was relatively new to the toy industry, but I'd been seeing that happening in the shoe industry before that. And I went to my boss at the time, who is famous now, Meg Whitman, currently CEO of Quibi, but eBay and Hewlett Packard before that. And I said to her, this makes no sense. We have great R&D capability, and kids need what we're doing. And she said, well, this is the issue. The toy industry is dependent on small, independent, and regional retailers to launch new products. Those are the guys that take all the risks and really test things. The big guys don't, and the industry's consolidated down to just 4 buyers, really, Toys R Us, Kmart, Target, Walmart at the time. And that just pissed me off. It wasn't something I could do anything about at the moment. I thought it was sort of the way of the world. But then between Play School and a sojourn in Ireland and a job as president of a social network, it sort of hit me, wait a minute. I know how to build a community. I just ran this social network, and I think this video thing is going to be important. And I think if we create kind of a little movie trailer for every product and take it straight to the people, we can do what the small retailers used to do, prove out these products. And that's what we started doing, launching one a day, October 20th, 2008.
So are these products, are they all being created internally by your team, or are you working with other makers, external makers, to kind of help commercialize or bring a minimum viable version of their product to market?
These are products created by others. There's a massive ecosystem I could see forming to do this, to make that possible. Everything from crowdfunding to figuring out how to manufacture something via the internet, finding resources to do so, shipping, onesies and twosies, design, all kinds of things that used to be hidden behind the walls of a big company are more accessible, mostly thanks to the internet and technology developments. So creating a product, while it is difficult, the ecosystem to do so has gotten to be spectacularly accessible. What's still difficult, though, what still is not really changing as much, is how do you break through? How do you get through and find your people? And I think the direct-to-consumer companies, which are flagging right now, flailing a little bit, are a proof that even having tons of venture capital doesn't necessarily make that easy. And most companies don't have tons of venture capital. It's just really hard to break through in a crowded world where there are more and better products than ever. And that's the problem we solve. So we don't make the products, we don't package the products. We say, once you're in production or about to be in production and you need to build a business, like maybe you've crowdfunded, you've gotten a couple projects behind you, but now you need to build a business, we can help. We have 4 million people who pay attention to what we launch every day. We move markets.
So tell me through those kind of typical steps from a maker coming to you with, it might even, did he come initially with the idea, to the kind of product that we would see for sale on Amazon or on other places? What do those steps kind of traditionally look like?
Well, first, I'll tell you ideally how it works. There's a sense of a problem to be solved generally, or an opportunity. Like, let's use Fitbit because everybody knows that. Gee, wouldn't it be great, I'm imagining that James Park said, wouldn't it be great to have a modernized way of tracking my steps to begin with? And there were new advanced microprocessors that made it doable in a smaller format. Wouldn't it be great if this were something that were, wearable, easy, possibly water resistant for a price, say, under $100, that could be connected, because we can now use the data that we would derive from a device and an accelerometer in a device and connect it to our own other devices and to a manufacturer and to a community. That's the opportunity. Wow, something's changed. I want to do something about it. It's kind of where things start usually. And hopefully the next step that a maker does is scope the size of the market, because one of the things that is most difficult for me to see is when somebody puts their heart and soul into something that has a very small market opportunity, because they have to be geniuses to get it right and capture all the market share in a very small market opportunity. Far better, like Fitbit, to go after, hey, plenty of people are interested in fitness. If there were a new, better way to track your fitness and track your goals, that could be a very large market. So sizing the market is super important. And then getting market feedback, just like a designer does. And business people need to behave like designers. Like, let's have no sort of religion about what our solution is, but go take it to people who might be potential customers. So those are the first very, very early steps, kind of sizing the market and getting smart about getting feedback about your ideas. Like, no professional designer would ever fall in love with their own ideas before strangers do. And that's kind of the litmus test, strangers.
There was a movie I was watching on a flight recently called Joy, about I'm trying to remember the name of the Joy. I can't remember the second name, the character's name, but the maker of the squeegee mops. You're probably going to tell me the name of that person. I can't actually remember the name of.
I saw the movie and I do remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and the thing I thought was interesting about that was, this was someone, an entrepreneur and a maker, saw problems and didn't just create one product, but they actually created a business behind it. Of the people, the makers that you work with, what do you notice about the difference between those people who perhaps they come up with one very good product, outstanding product, to those people who come up time and time again and don't just build a product, but they build multiple products and they really build a business as such? How do you see the difference between those two types of characters?
I think it's two things. One is the Joys of the world have a little bit more scope to their vision, like they essentially are setting out to redefine a category generally, or building a category behind a brand they have a vision for. And then there, frankly, is some luck to it, because it's super hard to get your first product out. And one of the things that might be unlucky is if you build all of your awareness and capital around a company name that can't be expanded. So this is one of my sort of rules of the road, is name your company after your vision, not your first product. So I'll give you an example of that. We have a very popular product called Peeps. It's this really cool little pincer with carbon fiber pads at the end of it. Fits in a pocket to clean your glasses, clean sunglasses, reading glasses, regular glasses. Works really well based on technology that was miniaturized from the space station. Same technology used to clean the optics in the space station. Peeps is the name of that product. Thank God the company is called Carbon Clean, because Peeps implies eyes, right? Chicks or eyes, one or the other. And if the company had been named Peeps, I think its opportunity and all the marketing it put into it would have been limited to something to do with eyes or glasses. Carbon Clean's a better name. So that's the luck part. I don't know that the founder understood that, or he got lucky, but he did the right thing.
And then you mentioning there about kind of some of those different stages. Where does kind of the financing piece come in? Because now a lot of makers, they've got different options for financing. Don't more necessarily just go to the bank of or credit card or mom and dad or a traditional bank. You have other options now. So what are some of the more innovative ways of financing the development of products or the scaling of products?
So the one that's obvious but wasn't obvious when we started business because it didn't exist, is crowdfunding. And I primarily mean Indiegogo and then Kickstarter, because they've built these massive communities that are prepared to support your dreams and prepared to participate. And what you're funding there in a physical product company is basically a loan against your first inventory. You're unlikely to get funding beyond that level unless you sort of really capture people's imagination. But you generally are on hook for delivering a unit, no matter how big the funding gets, tied to that. So that's one. Funding growth is harder, frankly, and there is one facility I really like called Now Account. And it was born out of the founder's experience of having a physical product, and growth almost killed her because when she got her first big order from Whole Foods, she didn't have the capital to produce it. And retailers are notorious for slow payment terms. So you're really their banker, right? Home Depot makes all of its profit on the float between the time it sells a product and it pays the manufacturer, all of its profit. So little guys can't handle that. But Now Account will take your purchase orders from credible retailers and pay you immediately for a very reasonable charge. I think it's 3.5%. So very different than the old days of what people used to call factoring, where you pay, usurious rates. This is a reasonable solution to keep that cash flow flowing. If you are working in a consumer packaged goods area, there's a wonderful funding platform called Circle Up. So it's equity investment, so that's different than Indiegogo and Kickstarter. So people are getting shares in your company, stock in your company. And it's essentially a social network of investors who kind of bring themselves together around deals that they like, and that Circle Up helps do that. So that's a great one for those kind of companies, and a hotbed of innovation because consumers are clamoring for new solutions in consumer packaged goods, being food, health, beauty. In fact, over the last 5 years, $17 billion of market share have shifted in those categories from large brands, incumbents, to smaller players.
That reminds me of the discussion I was having recently with someone from Diageo, the drinks company, and they were saying, previous generations, if let's say vodka, if they were buying vodka, they would buy Smirnoff because it was seen as an established brand. You knew the quality of it. But now millennials, younger generation just say, no, I don't want those brands. I want brands that are more boutique, artisanal. They speak to me and who I am and my community and what I'm about as well. And some of those big companies are really kind of struggling with how to think about it. So tell me, in terms of some of the products you work with, when you're talking about some of those makers, where does, I guess, community come in? Building a community around a product or a suite of products or a category. Is that something that you talked about how to try and building almost like I was going to say a movement? Maybe that's too grand.
No, it's not too grand. I call it citizen commerce, what we're doing. I trademarked that term.
Citizen
commerce. I was watching what was happening in media, citizen, journalism and citizen science, for example, where these previously impenetrable areas, like the media, was a fortress unavailable to the average person, and it's totally permeable now in a good way and a bad way. It's not all good, but it's definitely a powerful change. Citizen commerce, I think of as a more positive thing in that, here's the deal. You kind of alluded to this, and I want to double click on what you said. You said something really important. Whereas maybe our parents' generation defined who they are or their character through maybe the hour they spent in a house of worship and the rules they followed based on what they learned on Sunday or Friday evening. That was kind of like how you become a good person or how you express yourself. People still do that, of course. This is still important, but people are finding meaning and self-definition and character definition through their actual day-to-day actions as consumers, which, if you only say that, sounds really crass. But people are holding themselves to a high bar. When I support this company, what do I know about them? Do they have great employment practices? What are their environmental practices? Do they pay their taxes? Who are the founders? Are they veterans or people of color? Somebody that I'd like to give a little bit extra helping hand. These are the things people think about when they're buying, the toothpaste and the vodka and the car and, the pair of jeans and the tech gadget. And so on one hand, we lament kind of the flight away from traditional religious kind of institutions, but I think people have not at all moved away from having a sense of purpose and contribution, but they're just doing it differently. And so our companies are showing up, as are the craft vodka companies, to serve that purpose, because many of them are having that same experience in their own lives. So what that's meant for us as a company is from day one, we always tagged every product that we launched to the values behind it. And we define what those values are. We learned over time what our community cared about. But those are things that, like I mentioned before, who's the entrepreneur? How do they manufacture? Where do they manufacture? And so great new brands are building community around that, around engaging you, whether it's Everlane or Warby Parker in sort of the direct-to-consumer space. In our world, we connect people to the makers. So we're closer to probably an Etsy, or if people remember, Woot was an inspiration to me in starting the business, where we say, it's not so much about us, Grommet, we're connecting you to the people who make these products and exposing you to each other.
But that must be a responsibility for you as well, because you're not necessarily arbiters of taste, but you're anything, if someone purchases or kind of learns about a product through you and that product doesn't live up to the expectations, that can has a brand risk, I guess.
Yes, it's something I knew from day one. In fact, I wrote a blog post a couple years into the business apologizing for the future mistakes we'd make. I knew, if you're going to hold yourself up to a high standard, people are, internally, and then you promote that or you share that, then you're asking people to basically hold a mirror up to everything you do. And we long prepared for that and have long acted against that. Nobody knows in the quiet moments in a company how decisions get made, but I've always been attentive to that, to not cutting corners. And then I use data to make sure I'm not just, drinking our own Kool-Aid. And a couple of things I look at, three things I look at all the time. One is our return rates on our products, like what products do people buy and send back. And when we modeled the business in the first, before it started, I thought that would be a typical e-commerce return rate, which is double digits, teens, I thought it would be. And our return rate's 3%. 3. And we're at scale now. I thought that would never last. It did, because what did last was our focus on quality and telling the truth. And we will tell you why not to buy a product too. We don't want you to be fooled or, kind of video helps a lot, but our copy helps as well. So that's one number I watch. Number is reviews. Everybody has reviews on their sites. We didn't invent that. But what we do that others don't do is we retire products when they fall below a quality benchmark that we have. So if we find that over time maybe a product doesn't hold up, we do test everything, but let's say somebody has it for a year and it degrades, and that's a common experience, it's going to be gone. And the last thing that I would be watching regularly is something that a lot of companies watch, our Net Promoter Score. But what I watch isn't so much the score. Ours is astronomical. It's in the high 70s. And if people know that methodology, that's about as good as it gets. I watch what the comments are. I'm trying to see when people are either promoters or detractors, where are we getting through to them and making their hearts sing and making it worth their money to participate? And where are we disappointing them? And I read every comment every day.
That's great. You share those kind of KPIs that you focus on. Actually, as you were talking about you mentioned a little bit about the generational kind of differences. Something that just occurred to me was, in terms of your book, it's called How We Make Stuff Now. And I thought it'd be great, and it probably is a service like this that I haven't found yet, how we make experiences now. Because it feels like a lot of, and this isn't just millennials, this is also going at the other side in terms of seniors and people who are retiring, that general shift away from people buying stuff to people buying experiences, and whether that's on kind of more holiday experiences or going in places and seeing different things as well. And it doesn't feel like, I'm just kind of wondering if there's kind of platforms out there that can do what you do, which is kind of bringing makers together to support and discover and help them sell. But at the same time, it's not about actual physical things, it's about experiences. I don't know if a service like that exists just now, if I've just kind of made that up.
Well, I admire, it's not exactly what you're describing, but I admire how Product Hunt services emerging companies with a really great feedback loop between the founders and their community. I mentioned earlier, I admire how Etsy does that. Like, these are very, very micro businesses. Generally, anyone selling on Etsy, the average folks on there are not making a full-time living there, but they still have business challenges that they help each other out with. So I'm very inspired by that, but it's also something I want to do more of ourselves at the Grommet, because it's a pretty lonely journey, actually, to create a product. I find people, that's why I wrote the book, people are solving all these problems in isolation. And we can help them out a lot, but the number one source of help would be when they can talk to a maker who has solved a similar problem. So that helps a lot. And I know you're talking about something broader when you talk about spirituality and how people are spending their time and their money. I get that as well. And I find that the great companies actually are recognizing that community experience is that they create. The great direct-to-consumer companies are doing a really nice job with this. Create kind of a stickiness and a virtual cycle in their own businesses that makes what might look like a non-commercial activity really important to create a community.
And your own kind of creative journey you've gone through building this business and working with all these makers, and even kind of before that, and what you were doing before. Tell us about a time when you worked on something, a product or your in a business, and you were giving it all your heart, all your soul, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out like you'd hoped. And more importantly, what was the lesson that you took from that experience?
Well, I would say my last business, I was president of a company called Ziggs, and we competed directly with LinkedIn. And what I learned, we had a small success. We were sold to a company called Reputation.com, but clearly your listeners have a LinkedIn profile and have not heard of Ziggs. So there was a clear winner in that space. And that's how, it should work. You can't really have two robust professional networks, social networks. But kind of obvious things I learned that were non-obvious to me when I started in the role were the benefits of professional networks to build a business. The founders of LinkedIn had been also at PayPal and had access to talent networks and especially to capital that was not possible in Boston, where there was no heritage like that. So, I learned, let's not take on a Silicon Valley, soon to be behemoth, without having sufficient capital, would be one lesson I learned. But for my own career, that maybe is a kind of watchword or negative lesson, but I learned a very positive lesson too, which was I had a great instinct that social media would matter. And it was at a time when nobody in my personal or professional networks knew what I was talking about. It was not a thing. People were sort of trying to explain LinkedIn to each other, and Facebook was kind of a gleam in everyone's eye at that point and early. And I learned to trust my own instincts about, kind of the Wayne Gretzky thing, skating to where the puck is going. It's something that I think designers are trained to do well. It's not like we're magicians or, have crystal balls, but we're trained to watch the signals and the tea leaves in the culture. And that was a good investment for me to spend my time on that company. I learned a lot, and it provided a platform for the Grommet. So obviously I've even used what I learned very directly.
And just to switch speeds for a minute here as well, is there, you're obviously reviewing, you're looking and different products all the time, working with different makers, but is there an online resource or a tool or an app like an Evernote, for example, that you find very useful in your own kind of creative process, about how you ensure that you're noting down things, capturing ideas as they come to you, or they just kind of help you in the process that you're going to go through as a CEO of an organization?
Oh, I'm so old school on that front. Yeah, I do, just use the standard notes app on my Mac, and that's fine, but I don't find it magical. I'm still kind of a notes like with my hands person. I don't retain and process information as well digitally as I do when I write it down. And I found that flaw even in how I manage my own calendar because, eons ago I moved to a digital calendar. But before that point, I used to kind of know what my day was like going into every day and the week. I had kind of a mental map of it always. I didn't miss appointments, for instance. And I found over the last few years I miss appointments. I have zero mental map. So I've done something really old school. I start printing out my calendar in the morning, and because I can look at it several times a day and not screw up. I haven't screwed up in a really long time since I started printing my calendar, and it's so old school. But I don't think the human brain, necessarily uniformly adapts to the tools, the same way. And in my case, maybe because I'm a designer, I'm super visual, like typing something versus and then having it disappear versus looking at it and writing it, in some cases matters to me. I still draw pictures too every night. I have a little book that every night I draw a little doodle of what was most important that day. Like the last 3 days or several days, I decided I'm doing a series, the Edward Monk Screen series, where it's responding to coronavirus. When I look back on 2020, I'm going to see this series of days, and I hope it's not months, where that same doodle will appear because it's such a present part of our lives right now. But generally, I draw something, different every single day, and it's such a great tool for me to find themes in my life, things that make me happy, things that I put up with too long, people that I care about. I would say mostly I look for sources of joy and angst when I look back at things like, how did I do that? That was miserable, or don't do that again, or whatever.
Well, hopefully over time that screen turns into a smile, and think that those
It will.
doodles get a bit happier as well. And what about if you were to recommend one book, not your own book, because we're going to come to that in just in a moment, so people can get their copy, but a book by another author that you think more people should be reading, and also an album or a record that you'd like to suggest to our listeners, what would those be?
I really like it's not a new book, but The Opposable Mind by Roger Martin. I think it's a great book for finding opportunities in unexpected places and thinking kind of laterally. So it's a great read. I'm not a big fan of business books for the most part. I think they're kind of articles that get blown up with helium into a whole book. It was just ironic I'm saying that because I wrote a business book. I promise my book's very dense. It's worth every page. So I would think of that. You know what? I sat down. Here's your question on albums. I'm the worst person to ask that. I sat down. There's a New York Times magazine that came out Sunday with the 25 kind of artists and songs of the moment. And I literally forced myself to sort of go through Spotify and listen to all of them because I felt like I knew almost none of them. So what I'm telling you is, well, I think this is important to be connected to the zeitgeist, to understand music trends. It's an area I fail really badly.
And did you find any, in that experiment of going and listening to that new music, did you find any new artists that you would listen to again?
No, but I did find I don't get Billie Eilish, for instance. She was one of the bigger names. Name I knew I should know better. I found I'm a Motown girl, R&B girl, and I'm not finding a lot I can connect with in current music. So I just am doomed to be irrelevant on the musical front.
Well, you actually have a great band from, I think they're Boston as well, in that kind of Motown vibe, but slightly more modern few years old, called Lake Street Dive. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Oh, really? No,
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Great band. So
Oh,
if you like that, I think they come out from the Conservatory in Boston. Boston's a great music place because you have Berklee School of Music and the Conservatory, and they've come out that
yeah,
called Lake Street Dive is a really cool band to check out if you're into the kind of Motown
I
thing.
will.
And
I
then
will check
and then
them out.
final question for you. Let's imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. So you've got all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you and you know no one. You have to restart. What would you do? How would you restart things?
That's such a fun question. I probably would not try to do another CEO gig, or something dependent on reputation. Like if I didn't have a reputation, I probably couldn't get a role that I'm trained for. So I'd probably double down on entrepreneurship, either at a small scale in terms of actually being a maker myself. I still really like making things. I have a loom, I weave, so it might be business, might not. Or I found another company where the only way reputation matters is when you're hiring and raising capital, and I'm good at doing that with strangers. Like I know I can do that without somebody knowing me.
Well, Jules, where's the best place for people to go to learn more about you, about the business, and also get their copy of the book?
Sure. Well, I just use my name everywhere. So Twitter and Instagram, it's just Jules Pieri. It's JULES PIERI. So easy to find me. I have a blog with that same name as the URL. The book, Barnes and Noble or your independent bookstores is where I would vastly prefer somebody buy the book, because I have real concerns about Amazon's dominance.
What is your favorite bookstore? And we'll put a link to your favorite bookstore in Boston that will probably be able to fulfill orders online as well. But what would be a good good online for any of our international listeners? What would be a good bookstore locally to you?
Porter Square Books.
Porter Square Books. Well, I think we'll put a link to there as well, just to give some love to some of the independent bookstores just now as well. Thank you so much, Jules, for coming on the show, sharing about the book. So we're going to have links there for everyone. People can go and get their copy of the book. And really appreciate you coming on, helping other makers, and coming on, sharing with us about your creative life.
Great. Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.